is such an incredibly exciting time of the year, particularly in a cool temperate climate like this. Everything wakes up, there's blooms everywhere, lots of beautiful fragrance, and of course, lots of things to harvest to eat. But it's also a really great time to get planting for the weeks, the months, and the year ahead. One of the groups of crops that I find so satisfying to grow at this time of the year are the root crops, things like carrots and parsnips, and of course my absolute favourite, beetroot. And the first thing I need to do to get them in the ground is prepare the bed. Preparing a bed for root crops is easy. You just aerate with a fork to make sure the soil's nice and loose. And then I add a light sprinkling of homemade compost. You don't need loads of manure or fertiliser because that would encourage leaves, and I want to encourage the roots. And when it comes to my root crops, I wait for the week that says it's time to sow. For me, that is warming soil, but some nice, mild, moist weather that means those little seed are going to rip away. One of my absolute favourite crops is beetroot. I love to eat it cooked or raw. In summer, thinly sliced beetroot salad, it's a favourite. And I grow lots of different varieties, but my best are Chioggia, which is a little candy stripe pink, and it is the sweetest to eat raw. Now, it's a really simple thing to do. I usually use a board, it's like preparing for paving, nice and flat, and then I just run that across the bed to get a nice straight line. And I've got my seed here, and by soaking them overnight, they're going to get out of the ground much more quickly. I just sprinkle them in that rill. I try and get a bit of spacing on them, say 2 or 3 centimetres, but I'm not too worried about that because as they germinate, I can thin them out and then just gently cover that over with the board. That'll give me a reasonable spacing, and I'll start again. Another fantastic root crop to sow right now are the carrots, and they are quite a fiddly little seed to sow. Now, carrot seed are tiny and they're impossible to sow into a rill, so I use a little trick. I mix that tiny seed with some fine soil. I can then sow that mix, and that is spacing and sowing the seed. This is a variety called Little Fingers. Water the seed in really gently to make sure you don't displace them. Consistency of moisture is key to germination over the next couple of weeks. So to aid that, I cover with a piece of fabric. You can use some hessian or an old blanket, but this is an old lace curtain from the op shop. The fabric really does reduce your need to water, but you still need to keep it moist. And then check in about a week, once those seeds start to germinate, lift it off. This technique gives you great germination for a lot less effort. I always try to have more seedlings on the go than the garden can handle, and that means wherever there's space, I can fill it with something to eat. While I'm always sowing for spring success, I'm also preparing to fail. So when I get a failed sowing, well, I've always got something to fill that gap. In this case, Silverbeet. It is such a rewarding crop. It's fast growing and it can go in anywhere, anytime. And me and the chickens, well, we both love it. Here you go, girls. Pop, 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 pop. Another really important job to do right now is to check your fruit trees, and you need to actually at times thin them. This is a plum, it's Luisa, and she is a chronic oversharer. She produces this huge glut of fruit, usually more every second year. So to try and even that fruiting out from year to year, and also to get her to produce larger fruit, but a few less of them, you literally thin it out. And you can be quite rough and just sort of work your way around and reduce some of the numbers of fruit in each of these clusters. By thinning, you're winning. I'm also going to thin the fruit on the quince tree. It's a variety known as pineapple, which gives you a clue to how big these fruit can get. I'm going to remove those that are on the tips of branches so they don't weigh them down and break them. While Well, it's the perfect time to plant some things outdoors. For other crops, the nights and the soil are still too cold here in central Victoria. So things like tomatoes I actually raise to quite an advanced size in a container before they go into the ground. These are reasonably advanced. You can see they're quite floppy, and if I potted them there, they're just going to blow around. But they will form roots all the way up that stem. So I'm just going to remove what were the original seed leaves. You can go quite a long way and then just carefully tip it out. And then that whole plant can go right to the bottom of that pot. Then I just backfill the whole way up. You can see how much that's stabilised that little plant. In 3 or 4 weeks, when the soil's warm enough, they can get out there and they will absolutely fire away when they hit the dirt. Anytime you spend in the garden, you're never going to regret it, but right now it is so rewarding. The work you do this weekend, well, you'll watch it grow in front of your very eyes, and you'll be harvesting those rewards for months to come. Have a beautiful time in your garden.